So this is a ship that I've been struggling to really figure out how to play, and it's only really recently that I've discovered a bit of a playstyle that I think works really well for this ship. And the archetype, I guess, that best describes it, I think, is a zoning ship. I think this ship is a bit like a radar ship, except less focused on zoning destroyers and more focused on zoning out radar cruisers and other battleships from pushing in. And I think there's a few different ships that do this, but I think this ship does a much better job just because of the Airstrike's ability to go over islands, right? You can get all that damage ignoring islands, and you exert that pressure on ships. You basically deter people from ever pushing in and using the islands to push up, because as we know, islands are pretty much the only effective way of pushing in this game. If you try it in open water, you're probably just going to end up dead. That is pretty much how this game has been designed from the ground up. So having a ship that essentially gets rid of that one little safety pocket can be very powerful when you use it that way. So you'll notice the island I've taken in this game is pretty much right in between B and C. And that's because I'm trying to support both of those caps at once. Maybe not with a radar, but with some gun support. You know, when the Marceau decides to kind of YOLO in almost, it does look like a good play initially just because, well, we have nobody in the middle. You can see our entire team has moved to the sides of the map and left our Hayate alone. But Hayate's got some pretty good guns in itself. And of course, we have these airstrikes, which we're going to drop right on that Marceau since he grounded. Usually it's a lot harder to hit destroyers. And, well, in this case, we're going to get some pretty good damage. I think we get 3,500 damage out of these bombs right here with 3 hits. We reset the cap a little bit, and I think that gives my Hayate enough confidence to go back in and spot, or something spots him, and he ends up dying. You can see on 500 HP. These bombs are really strong. They're good at preventing people from capping. You can use them as a cap reset tool if you know the last known location of a DD or someone else in the cap, or you're just guessing. They're a very versatile tool, but of course they do have a little bit of a longer reload, so you do want to make sure you use them properly. Right? You don't want to just waste them and throw them away, since you don't have too many charges every match. I believe I throw my next one away on this Neptune and don't really get much out of it, but it is something that you do have to consider the target you're going after. They only pen, what, 34? No, these ones pen 37. Sorry, the lower tiers pen 34 at tier 8 with the Harlem at least, and this one pens 37. You don't get that 38 mil pen, so you are looking for anything with less than 38 millimeters of armor. So that's primarily 32 millimeter deck armored battleships. Those are your juicy targets if you're going for damage. They're really useful against cruisers as well. If you don't trust me, they're really useful against cruisers. If you don't believe me, I believe one of my last videos at the very end, there was a clip where I was playing against a Nevsky and dropped 4 airstrikes on him over time and essentially killed him completely with the airstrikes. Did 45k damage with the airstrikes and just a little bit with the main guns. It's kind of ridiculous how much damage you can get, assuming you get good bomb RNG and you're able to pen the deck armor. That is the key here. Of course, they have really good fire chance as well, so if you see someone damage control or get hit by torpedoes, that kind of thing, you can just send an airstrike over, and it's likely you're going to get a permanent fire, which is also really good damage against those higher health battleships, because fires, of course, are percentage based, and getting a fire on something like a Vermont is going to do a lot of damage to him, as well as just be a general nuisance, right? Yes, that is the one issue, I think, with this ship being in the game as it is. I think planes just don't belong in this game, and they just make the gameplay worse and less fun for everyone. But it's in the game, so I guess we're going to play it, right? And it is a ship that I've been playing a little bit more recently just because it's been a bit of a puzzle for myself to figure out how to play this ship effectively, because it does play different than a lot of the other tier 10 cruisers. It's not the DPM of the ship that carries you through games, where you're looking to find places to survive from, right? You're looking for good island cover, you're looking for good, even open water angled positions, that kind of thing. This ship, if you decide to play it that way and just sit at the back of the map and spam HE at things, you'll do all right, but you're not going to get the most amount of damage you could out of it. I think this ship is much more effective when you're playing it as almost a radar cruiser. I found myself playing it in a lot of positions that I'd play at Des Moines, funnily enough, but you don't have that radar to deter DDs. So your goal is to help your destroyers as much as possible when they're spotting things, right? You're trying to keep them alive. The main priority, I guess, with these airstrikes is those radar cruisers on the enemy team at the beginning of the match. Or if a battleship decides to push in and just throw his HP away, always will take free damage. Free kills, free damage out of battleships that decide to YOLO is good by me. But I really do like to focus on the radar cruisers with these airstrikes. A lot of the times you'll find that the radar cruiser players like to play on those, like that island I positioned myself on in the beginning, where that Neptune was. You'll find they like to push up to these big bulky islands that allow them to just radar from cover and help their team that way. It's really strong. I do it myself. It's a great way to support your teammates and help win flanks, win caps, and kill destroyers. It's really, really strong, but airstrikes can get over it. And that's what I'm trying to counter. That's my goal if I'm trying to win the game. If you're going for straight damage, obviously save them for battleships. They can crush battleships. I think we saw that in my initial review of this ship with the 40k salvo on a Conqueror. It's pretty disgusting when you get those full pens on things. So I'm glad these bombs don't have like 60 mil pen or something like that, where they just auto pen all battleship deck armor, because they'd be just filthy overpowered then. At least the way it is now, you can shatter it if you're a big bulky battleship, and if you're a smaller cruiser, you're unlikely to take as much damage. That said, though, if you get unlucky with the RNG, with the bomb drop, you're going to take some pretty gigantic damage. Sorry about my phone there. I got it switched off now at this point. But yeah, this ship, I think, is actually really, really strong. I don't think this is a weak tier 10 cruiser. I think it's actually really good when used correctly. Of course, like most cruisers, using it correctly relies on the enemy team pushing in. You'll notice that in this game, the enemy team has pushed hard on the C flank, and of course they did push a little bit on the A flank, but have been cleaned up by the rest of my team here. But we're trying to just run away and get to our next island. Of course, the island that I would love to get to is on the EF-ish area with the 4 and 5 line, right next to B there. That island would be perfect as they're trying to push across from C into B. I could just drop airstrike after airstrike on them from relative safety, taking 1v1s, that kind of thing. This ship really doesn't hold up in a 1v1 with any of the tier 10 cruisers. I've tried, trust me. It's mainly the fire duration that kills this thing. I don't really know why they made this ship take 30-second fires. I guess I wish they would have nerfed the armor more and allowed you to have normal cruiser fire duration. It's pretty frustrating to burn out like a battleship in a ship with this little armor, but the heal does make up for it a little bit, I guess. But realistically, it seems odd that this ship has that long duration fire when something like the Petro retains its cruiser fire duration, right? It's odd, but I guess I'd rather ships not all be like Petro, so I won't complain too much. I'd just like to see maybe Petro receive this 60-second fire duration. It'd be nice to see maybe help balance that ship out a little bit. There'd be other things too, like concealment changes for sure to keep it spotted a little bit easier without getting just instantly radared. But enough of Petro. I think we all understand how disgustingly broken that ship is. This ship is not like a Petro. I bring that up because sometimes you can look at the armor of this thing and maybe the concealment a little bit as well and think, oh, it's just another tanky battle cruiser thing in the cruiser tree. It doesn't tank like a Petro at all. And the guns are nowhere close to as good as Petro. They don't have anywhere near the pen. You don't have the reload. And of course, you don't have the dispersion of Petro either. It is just overall a downgrade from that ship from the gunpowder perspective. But that's where the airstrikes come in. I think that using the airstrikes efficiently, like I mentioned earlier, getting into positions where you can zone people out, I think that is where this ship is at its absolute strongest. And mainly, there's islands like that on most maps. There's going to be a few maps that you're really, really going to struggle on. I think there's maybe maps like Mountain Range where you really only have 1 or 2 island options on the sea flank, and otherwise you're just out of luck. There's just too much open water. But otherwise, there's a lot of islands where you can go push up to, and with your 13 kilometers of range on these airstrikes, you're going to be somewhat effective at zoning people away. Now, all that said, the long-range HE spam is not bad on this ship. Neither is the long-range AP as long as you're getting broadsides. It's all right. You have a 20% fire chance on the main guns with the HE, and if you get a little bit lucky with your dispersion, you can actually light quite a few fires and get some decent damage out of it. Fires are really, really strong at killing things because of that dot damage and continuous dot damage, right? Pairs really well with that airstrike as well. Oh, we just missed that Nevsky there. Leading these airstrikes, of course, is a little bit tricky if you're not used to leading long-range shots with a battleship. If you want to practice, you can always try shooting at long range with a Montana or even a North Carolina. That'll get you really used to predicting what people are going to do at longer ranges. I think even otherwise, these airstrikes give you a lot of leeway just with how large their drops reticle is, right? You can drop people that are going across. They don't have to be bow in. I'm pretty sure the initial release of these airstrikes, they were very narrow, so people had to be bow in order for you to get those big damage salvos, or at least land a lot of bombs on target. Now, the way they are, they're kind of just a box, where as long as the enemy ship is in that box, they're probably going to take some damage. I've also found that these planes really don't get shot down all that much, unless you send the planes into a clump of 3, 4, 5 ships, that kind of thing. So it's not like you have to worry about these planes maybe not being so good against the high AA ships, which is a little disappointing. I gotta say that the planes are just able to go wherever. I think it'd be an interesting balancing mechanic to make them make them actually die to AA. But I guess that's just the way airplanes are in this game. They don't get shot down for a very good reason, and that's that it's frustrating for the aircraft carrier player or the person playing the Golden Lion. These planes are just very tanky, and while they don't have that ability to dodge flak, they kind of spawn within the flak range anyway, so it's not like you're going to eat that much flak with them. And if you do, it's probably pretty unlucky. You can see we didn't lose any planes to that Azumo at all, and hit him pretty hard and got a double fire even, forcing him away behind the island, allowing us to push in. That's another great use of the airstrikes, is forcing people to back off and allow you to gain some ground, right? Nobody really wants to sit and take these airstrikes, so if somebody's pushed out on you, maybe it's a Des Moines nosing out of an island and just trying to DPM you away, you can actually just drop the airstrike in on where they exactly are, forcing them to reverse or eat a massive salvo from the airstrikes. Things like that, using them as zoning tools, pushing people away, forcing people to position differently against you. I think that is the best use case of these airstrikes outside of dealing damage. Because, of course, damage is really nice as well, as you can see on that Azumo. Even that ship should have shattered a lot more of that. I don't actually know how we got that good a salvo. Maybe a bunch landed on the stern or nose of his ship, which only has that 32 mil armor. Azumo, of course, has a 57 millimeter deck armor, something like that. It's pretty good, but you can see we're already able to airstrike him again. And right over this island. These islands don't matter to a Golden Lion. We can get damage over them without very many issues at all. Assuming we have spotting, of course, but spotting's pretty easy to come by these days given the concealment of ships and the way that, well, most games have an aircraft carrier spotting a lot of things anyway. Another 4 pens and a fire. Very good stuff. And I actually didn't expect this DD to be here, so you can see the turret traverse is a bit of an issue on this ship, even with the range mod, as you can see that I'm running. With reload, it's even worse. The turret traverse isn't bad. Like, it's not Yamato turret traverse, but it's still bad enough that you want to be prepared and pre-turning your turrets. If you're a battleship player, you'll be used to this, but maybe if you're used to lighter cruisers with those really fast turret traverse, or destroyers, you'll need to learn how to manage your turrets a little bit better. But that's not a huge deal considering this ship is pretty maneuverable, and you're probably going to know where people are coming from anyway. We're already up to 214,000 damage. This is by far my best game I've had in this ship, and really the game where it felt like I understood what this ship can and cannot do. You'll notice how early, if you look back in the tape of this one, that I left this flank at sea. I left pretty early on. The enemy team was really at the sea line, gearing up to push, but we recognized the push coming in and managed to get away in time. This ship does not hold up well to sustain fire from a lot of ships, and I think the biggest thing is knowing when you can and can't push, and that's probably the biggest challenge of this entire game for all classes. I think all classes, that is the hardest thing to learn, and really what separates a good player from a great player, that kind of thing. The aiming system, pretty easy to understand, but learning that positioning. So I think this ship is definitely a solid tier 10 cruiser if you're looking at it, but don't expect to be wowed by the guns. It's that combination of airstrike power and the main guns that can get you some good damage, as we get 8 overpens on the broadside rune. Yeah, overpens and just misses are pretty common in this thing. But that's the game. I thought this was a pretty solid example of what this ship is looking like, and this is with a pretty low skill point commander still, as this line is very new, and I haven't had the opportunity to really grind up a commander for it yet. So because of that, we only have 13 points, and this is how I've decided to set it up at this point. I think the interesting things probably are the gun feeder. Maybe you'd consider running Grease the Gears if you wanted the faster turret traverse. Like I mentioned, that's a bit of an issue. But you do want to be able to switch between your HE and your AP a lot. You do find that you'll get better damage if you swap to the correct ammo type for the right situation. I am using extra AA because, well, this AA is pretty good. It's not perfect, and an aircraft carrier can definitely still kill you if they want to. So getting that little extra damage, pairing that with your defensive fire, makes a pretty potent AA combo. And I think other than that, it's pretty standard outside of heavy HE and SAP. We have still a 12 kilometer, less than 12 kilometer concealment. So taking this to buff our HE damage output, I think makes a lot of sense. And I've really enjoyed this ship more now that I've had this. It buffs our HE shell damage up to nearly 4,300 alpha, which is pretty nice given that we have 47 mil pen and 20% fire chance. If you're hitting your shells, you're probably going to do some pretty decent damage and potentially light a fire. Eventually, I would really like to probably get top grade gunner for those closer quarters engagements, getting a reload down a little bit, 8% better. Adrenaline Rush is also a consideration of mine. Maybe I would forego top grade gunner in favor of survivability expert. You can see that would buff our HP a little bit better, given that 50,000, 52,000 I guess, isn't amazing for a tier 10 cruiser anymore. Given that the game started out with things like Zhao with 40,000. This is with survivability expert, as you can see. Getting that extra HP is nice because a lot of the cruisers these days have around that 55 to 60k HP, so buffing it up a little bit might help with that survivability that is a little bit of an issue with this ship. But yeah, that is the Golden Lion. Here's my upgrades, haven't changed since that original video. It's a nice ship to play, and I think now that I've got it figured out, I'll play it a little bit more, but I think I've kind of solved the puzzle at this point. It's a bit of a zoner ship, and really, really good at preventing people from pushing in. So, thank you guys very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.